How's it going, everyone? 2025 is here, and while there has been a little bit of a lull over the past couple of weeks as far as new game releases, that is about to come to an end, and we are kicking 2025 off with a remaster of a game that I honestly never thought would have been remastered. I still remember when I got the notification on my phone back in September of 2024 when Freedom Wars Remastered was announced. Now, a lot of you guys watching this channel may not be familiar with Freedom Wars. Freedom Wars was a game released on the PlayStation Vita, and it came out back in 2014 in a time where, let's be honest, at that point, the PlayStation Vita was really on its last leg. The PlayStation 4 had come out swinging, and it was a gigantic success, and it was obvious to see that Sony was putting the bulk of their attention towards the PlayStation 4, rather than continuing to spend money on PlayStation Vita titles. Towards the end of the PlayStation Vita's life, and in that latter stage, we did see these underrated gems come out, and really throughout the entirety of the PlayStation Vita's life. You could look at a Gravity Rush, a Killzone Mercenary, an Uncharted Golden Abyss, so on and so forth. The Soul Sacrifice, a Unit 13, I could go on and on. But Freedom Wars was one of those games that really stood out to me as a longtime PlayStation Vita fan. An action RPG with a really interesting setting, cool gameplay mechanics. However, it came out, saw a little fanfare on PlayStation Vita for the people who still playing games on the Vita, and then it went to the wayside. Well, now, over 10 years later, Freedom Wars is back, and it's coming to modern platforms refined and remastered with Freedom Wars Remastered. We still don't know a ton of information about the remaster. However, we've got enough where we can talk about it, and it is a remastering of a PS Vita game. They don't have to go absolutely above and beyond. What was there in the PS Vita version was already quite good as an action RPG. As long as they polish it up, and it looks like they are doing that, this will be worthwhile to check out. Some of you guys might be wondering what the price point of the game is, because there is no pre-order listing on Steam. There is no listing on PlayStation Store yet for Freedom Wars Remastered as far as the price point is concerned, but on Nintendo Switch and the eShop, while you can pre-order the game, it does have the base game listed at a $39.99 price tag. There is a contribution edition that is priced at $49.99. We'll go over the contents of that edition as well, but as far as price point, it will be $40, which I think is the right price to go with it. Yes, there were times where the Vita version of the game was down to $5, but we're not going to get a game like this for $5, $10, $20. It's going to be around $40. And there's some stuff I do want to go over, and on top of that, I do want to go over some insight that was noted from developers on a potential sequel about the game, which, spoiler alert, could happen if Freedom Wars Remastered sells well enough. The overview of the game from Bandai Namco notes this: for the crime of existing, your 1 million year sentence begins today. The game is set in a dystopian future. The world is ravaged by pollution and depleted of natural resources, and humanity lives in sprawling prison complexes called panopticons. Anyone born into this hellscape are deemed sinners. Players seek their freedom by volunteering for extremely dangerous combat operations to compete with other panopticons for what remains of the planet's dwindling resources. The game's key features note deep character customization. Create a unique look that reflects your style with a vast array of options. From facial features to clothing and accessories, tailor your weapon loadouts and gear to suit your gameplay preferences. Stand out in the fight for freedom. Customization, a big core aspect of the game, and certainly going to be one of the elements that you'll sink some time into. Maybe not the level of character customization that you'll see in some of the modern games with super in-depth character creators and whatnot, but still a nice little component to sink your teeth into. An elevated experience. Obviously, with Freedom Wars Remastered, you are going to get some quality of life improvements, and the game is going to be running better than ever. Freedom Wars Remastered brings enhancements such as 4K resolution, upgraded textures, and 60 frames per second performance on PlayStation and PC. On Nintendo Switch, it will be running at lower resolutions, of course, and it will be 30 frames per second. 30 FPS was what the original game ran on the Vita. On top of that, an overhauled weapon crafting system and other gameplay upgrades, as well as added difficulty settings, because Freedom Wars could be a fairly challenging game, but now to fine-tune the difficulty options, I think will be great for those looking for a more accessible experience. We're a decade removed from the original game. I want a game like this to be as accessible to as many people as possible and have as many quality of life improvements as possible, because ultimately, there is a larger audience that this game is going to be marketed towards, given that it's going to be on all major platforms and not just stuck on the Vita. On top of that, you've got improved graphics, bringing environments and characters to life, while refined controls ensure more responsive, intuitive gameplay. Bear in mind that this was a PlayStation Vita title. If you don't know, the PlayStation Vita was around the power in between a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 3. That's generally the visual levels that you would see, like just below PS3 games. Games like Uncharted, Golden Abyss, and Killzone Mercenary were certainly pushing what the Vita could do, but ultimately, keep your expectations in line as far as what to expect out of this game from a technical standpoint, especially all these years later. The real drawing card of this game is the in-depth gameplay, and on top of that, with the updated visuals, with the gameplay intact from the core aspect, you will also retain the online functionality of the game, and you'll have the option for exhilarating cooperative battles. Join forces with up to 7 players in Freedom Wars' co-op mode, work together to rescue citizens and take down massive abductors in fast-paced, action-packed missions. With dynamic teamwork and strategy, you'll face ever-evolving challenges that demand skill, coordination, and quick thinking. If you're wondering about the content level of the game, circling back to the original release on the PlayStation Vita, How Long to Beat has the main story around 29 hours. If you're looking for a main and sides, that'll bump it up to 42 hours, and completion is all the way up to 74 hours. Yes, this game has a lot of content and optional content for you to sink your teeth into. A lot of replayability options will certainly give you a bang for your buck as well. And if you want to jump into the co-op play, that'll add another layer to the game as well. In an interview with PlayStation Blog Japan, Takashi Tsukamoto, director of the original Freedom Wars at DIMS, as well as the development producer of Freedom Wars Remastered, noted this: "We've wanted to make a sequel ever since the game was released 10 years ago, and if you look up some articles and dig up some stuff, it seems like a sequel is something they've wanted to do for a very long time. Ultimately, y'all know how the game is played. Freedom Wars was released on the Vita. It wasn't this gargantuan megaton success, so a sequel never came to light, but the opportunity never came up. This time, we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity, and with Bandai Namco Entertainment producing while we developed, and with it being the 10th anniversary, the timing was right to do something." What I find rather interesting about all of this is I believe Sony had the rights to the Freedom Wars IP, and they actually gave up the IP, from what I understand, to Tsukamoto, so they could do this new release. And it is interesting because the game isn't being released on Xbox. I don't know if the game would have been released on Xbox regardless, but it is something to consider given that this was initially a PlayStation Vita exclusive, but it will be available on Switch, PS4, PS5, and PC. It was noted when we received the license from Sony Interactive Entertainment to create a remastered version and we were looking for a publisher, Bandai Namco Entertainment kindly stepped forward and offered to publish. You know, I'm kind of surprised that PlayStation wouldn't come to the table. I feel like if they remastered it in-house and they greenlit a remaster and published it, it just would have been something that would have built a lot of goodwill with their audience. I guess they're more in line with chasing after the live service and Concord bag to be bothered to remaster Freedom Wars themselves and publish a Freedom Wars Remastered, but hey, what can you do? At least somebody came to the table in Bandai Namco and decided to publish Freedom Wars. And it was noted, and I find this rather interesting, in an interview with IGN. Now, a little bit of a background on the development of the game and the creation of the idea. There's a lot of insightful information in this IGN interview from last year, where they talked to Takashi Tsukamoto, and he noted as far as the emphasis of the game and the dystopian vision for Freedom Wars story, noting when the original version came out 10 years ago, there was a thing called My Number in Japan. Similar to the US and Social Security numbers, this was a very new concept in Japan 10 years ago. Citizens of Japan didn't have a Social Security equivalent, and since it was a brand new idea coming up, there were a lot of people who were against it. Like, don't put a number on us. I guess living in a first world country like Japan, they always have your information on hand. You're on file. It's kind of like you're being in constant surveillance. When you're walking around the city, there's cameras everywhere. There's a little bit of a parallel between that and this game. Obviously, we're not in prison, but the idea of being in constant surveillance and people having our information was a very strong concept we wanted to work with when creating this game. In the game, these people are prisoners with million-year sentences. It's not a one-to-one, obviously. I mean, I hope I'm not a prisoner talking about it. Now, that was back in 2014, but to give you guys a little bit of a background where the idea of the game came from. It is a faithful remake, so bear in mind that some of the design choices may be a little bit dated, with the game being over a decade old. It visually and from a user accessibility standpoint, a lot of it has been elevated, but the essence of the game still stays intact. And on top of all of this, with all of that information on the table, You might be wondering, if you were a big fan of the original game, does this point towards the potential of a sequel? Well, Tsukamoto was asked that in the IGN interview, noting, "We've been wanting to create something like this for a long time, but we really didn't have the opportunity. As DIMS, the development team, we've been looking for opportunities to release something, maybe a sequel, something related to Freedom Wars. However, it was very difficult to set up a team and nothing was really lining up. At some point, we said maybe a remastered version of the original would be good. The opportunity never really presented itself until now. We were able to come to an agreement with Sony regarding the license, and they were able to partner up with Bandai Namco, and it just so happens that it's about 10 years later that all of it started to come to fruition. So how about that? All of that came together, and Sony did have the license as far it originally, the original release was concerned, but they came to an agreement, and it is being published by Bandai Namco. Tsukamoto noted what success would look like for this game to do well, and well enough that we could take the step to potentially releasing a sequel. As much as we'd like to share it with you, we don't know if there's going to be a sequel yet, of course, but if there's a sequel, we have tons of ideas that we'd want to implement into said sequel, and the idea of a Freedom Wars sequel is incredibly exciting, but let's just hope that the remastered release does well, and that's the first step of the equation. The game will be released at $39.99 on PC, Steam, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, as well as Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, it is noted on the Steam page it does utilize kernel-level anti-cheat, so that is going to be a factor you have to consider if you're buying the game on PC. $39.99 for the base game, and there will be a contribution edition. Really, the contribution edition isn't anything to write home about. You'll get the base game, a digital art book, and the contribution boost pack. That'll be priced at $49.99. That really sounds like something that if you're a gigantic fan and you just want to support even more, get that edition, but as far as a boost pack, I don't think that's going to be enough. As far as value is considered for the extra $9.99 and a digital art book as well. Love me my physical art books, but digital art books really don't do it for me. If you're buying the game on PC and Steam, the game will be fairly easy to run. It should be Steam Deck verified, not verified as of the recording of this video, but that shouldn't be a problem given Core i5 7600, Ryzen 3 3100, 4 gigs of RAM, GTX 770 or an RX 470, and that is for 1080p low settings at 60 frames per second. Recommended i7 8700 or a Ryzen 5 3600, 8 gigs of RAM, a GTX 1060 or a RX 570, and then that is for the high settings with 1080p 60 frames per second as well. Given that the deck is 1200 by 800, should be no problem whatsoever, and it's a Vita game at the end of the day. It should be no problem, and it is going to be playable on the Switch, so be on the lookout for that. Freedom Wars Remastered will be dropping on January the 10th, as always with the PC release. It'll be 6 p.m. Eastern time on January the 9th, and that's just how the time conversions work out, but yeah, that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.